Okay, today in the greenhouse on the Garden Oasis channel, this is the Garden Oasis channel, we are going to be making Hosta duplicates by cutting the rhizome and just getting free hostas. It's a great way to do it. If you love hosta like I do, I have all size hostas. I have hostas that are miniature that will fit in the palm of your hand, and I have some that are in pots so large I can barely move them. So hostas are a great plant to grow. They are considered a perennial, zone 3 through 8, and they'll come back better each year. And even if you get hard freezes, they can still survive and do really well. So we're going to start by removing this hosta from the pot. Unfortunately, it's going to have to be cut out because the roots have grown through the watering holes, and we're going to have to make that work. So we're going to cut those out. Okay, I'm starting by taking my razor blade, and this is kind of an unusual thing to see in the garden, but it is antiseptic mouthwash. And I do use that to clean all my tools because you never know, you might pick up a disease, so just give it a light spray and wipe it down. And we're going to make sure it's got a clean blade. We don't want to damage the plant by giving it a disease. So I'm just going to cut the roots off the bottom. I really need a pair of scissors to do this, but this is sharp enough, and I should be able to get all the roots off so I can get this out of the pot cleanly. It's a little bit more difficult. All right, let's see if she'll pop out of there now. I'm going to gently take it all the way upside down and just shake it, pull, and it's not going to come out. Okay, the next thing we're going to try to take it out with this. This is a Fisker's garden knife, but in Japan they call these hori knives. So we're going to just carefully cut around there because we have a difficult time getting it out. I'm trying not to damage the plant. And hostas are also known as the plantain lily, and they come in a lot of different sizes. I've got some that are so large I can't hardly move the pot alone, and I've got some that are so small that they're miniature and you can pick them up and they'll sit in the palm of your hand. I'm going to try to carefully remove it. All right, no damage. I'm going to keep the tag because we're going to need that later when we start putting it into other pots. I'm going to clean the top off, and let's take a better look and see how many we have on the crown or the rhizome. And we're going to need to rinse this off, so I'll need to get a bucket of water and remove most of the topsoil so we can get a better look at what we've got below the soil surface. Okay, now we have a clean bucket of water. We're going to douse the hosta in the water, and we're going to try to remove as much topsoil as we can and separate the roots out so we can get a better look at I'm just pulling it apart and just trying to get rid of as much. There's really a lot of root growth in here that's grown probably past where it should have been sold, but it's no problem. We're just going to carefully break it apart. Hostas are really tough. They can take a lot of manipulation with their roots, cutting with their roots, so we're just going to try to pull them apart gently. Even though they are tough, we don't want to break too much. But I'm just going to remove that topsoil as much as possible so we can get that rhizome exposed, or the crown of the hosta, and then we can start cutting it with our razor blade a little bit more with surgical precision so we don't damage the plant. I'm just kind of shake it to get as much topsoil off as possible. And you can see there's even new growth starting below the soil surface. So hostas are great plant for shade and part sun. I found that if you have an irrigation system or you diligently water it, they will survive in probably part sun, even maybe some slight afternoon sun, but I wouldn't have it in full sun. I don't think it would survive very well because the leaves just will not stand up to an extremely hot sun, especially if you live in the southern part of the U.S. or somewhere where you have a very hot summer. Okay, so we're starting to see the crown, and I'm going to need to remove a little bit more there. Just try to get as much of the topsoil out of there as possible. Okay, and then we're starting to see the crown. I'm going to have to carefully try to take the hosta apart with a razor blade, and for that I'm going to put on a pair of gloves because I don't want to cut my hand. I'm going to dry this off and get rid of our water because we don't want to have a major spill here. Depending on the size of your crown, there's a few things you can use. You can use a pair of scissors, and again we're going to just spray that with some antiseptic mouthwash to kill any germs or diseases that might be on there. Same thing with our cutters. We don't want to spread any disease. We've already sprayed these earlier, and our razor blade has been sprayed. So we're going to try to carefully work our way around the crown of the plant and just look for some places where we can divide it. See how hard it is. I'm going to take a razor blade and run it in there. I don't know if you can see this. It's a little bit difficult. I start cutting into the crown, and like I said earlier, I need to be wearing gloves while I'm doing this. Okay, I'm going to put on my gloves since I'm working with this razor blade. I don't want to cut myself, and that's always a good idea. Even though these aren't the thickest gloves, I think they'll protect me from a slight cut. So we're going to take the razor blade and try to find a good spot. I think I see a spot here where we can just carefully cut into the rhizome and just make sure we get a lot of roots with it. Now, if you look from the side, you can see the rhizome there. This is called the crown of the plant, and we might be able to actually divide this a second time, but you just want to make sure you have some roots with each section of the plant, because the crown itself will not support the plant. You have to have roots. So let's see if we can get one more cut out of this. I'm going to go around this side, kind of examine the roots and see what's going on down there. And we're going to cut again. And so here, this would be one plant. Okay, I think this is good. So we've got one whole plant there. In a couple years, this will be the same size as the original plant. This will be plant number 2. It's also got, I don't think we can divide this. It might be possible, but I don't want to divide it again. It's pretty small. I'm going to go back to the main plant, and we're going to try to cut carefully into the rhizome again and pull it apart there. Now we've got 4 plants from one. You can see, and the crown is very, very tough. It'll survive this. A lot of people think this will be murdering the plant, but it will not. It will survive. And if for some reason it didn't, or you still have, if it also didn't survive, you'd still have a couple plants. We're going to try to get one more cut out of here and try to split that apart as well. Okay, one more split. All right, so this one, I think we've got plenty of roots there. You can see what's left of the crown or the rhizome. That's 3 plants. I think we might be able to get 2 out of this, but I don't know if I want to split it that far. So that would be 4. And then this one, let's see, I think we might be able to get 2. I'm not sure though. But let's take the razor blade and cut one more time and carefully separate. So this is another plant. That's probably enough since we're going to be cutting back the leaves. Even though there's not much root there, I think that's going to survive. Unfortunately, this is just some leftover roots. And this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we got 6 plants from one hosta plant that we probably paid, I think it was around $7 for. So we can multiply that, and each year we can do this, let it get bigger in some pots, keep it the same size, but we'll end up with as many plants as we want to and only paying for it one time. So basically we're getting free hostas. And I'm going to clean the roots off of each of our split hosta. Just carefully remove the topsoil. You can see most of it's gone. That's 1. This one's got a little bit more topsoil on it, maybe a little bit harder to get off there. Okay, that's number 2. Looks like the roots are all still intact. That's 2. This one's got quite a bit of roots. This will really grow fast into a whole new plant, or a fuller plant. And let's see. Okay. There's an old garden saying called pruning stimulates growth, and that's what we're doing with this hosta. We're going to stimulate new growth and end up with half a dozen hostas where we started with just one. I don't want to be too rough. This one's a little bit, okay, it's a little bit weak there. All right, and then the last one, boy, this one's really got some nice roots, and you can see the crown was actually starting to send out a new shoot there, and this is late August. All right, clean them off. Now we're ready to pot them up in the new pots, and we're going to be doing that, and that should be the next step. All right, the next step is I'm going to create my own potting soil for the hosta. This is a standard potting soil. I'm going to put some of that in there. One part of that, and hostas like really well draining soil, so I'm going to put in, this is really fine shredded pine bark. You can see that is really fine. This is not the stuff you're going to top dress your garden with. This is more of a soil conditioner. I'm going to put a lot in there to help with drainage, and then when I get them into each pot, I'm going to top dress it with vermiculite to hold in the moisture and just to keep it healthy there so it doesn't dry out. So I'm going to mix this together. This is a really well draining soil, which is what they're going to love. All right, I'm going to start with the first cutting. Get a small pot that I had in the greenhouse. And I think that's going to fit. It wouldn't hurt to do a little bit of pruning on it, but I'm just going to try to keep the whole thing in there. Probably could use slightly larger pots, but I think these will work okay. I'm just going to tamp that down to get it a little bit on the firm side so it doesn't fall over. All right. Now, the next step for each one is to cut the leaf sections off so it can start fresh. And I'm going to find my cutters here. All right. And I'm going to cut the tops out. And we're going to start. This looks like this would damage the plant. The hostas are really tough. And this will just, like I said, pruning stimulates growth. So you're starting over there, and the hosta will be just fine next year. Okay, we're going to do this with another one. This one has a very small amount of roots with it, but it'll still make it because we're going to remove. These roots will not have to support all of these leaves because, like you just saw, we're going to be cutting them away. So, I'll put this one there. Try to center this one a little bit better this time. Tamp down so it'll be a little bit on the firm side. Doesn't fall over. Okay, a little bit more. Now we're going to cut the tops out. Okay, that's two plants we've got going there. And that's exactly the way they should look. Cut the tops out. Okay, we're going to do a third one here. This one has a lot of roots with it. Probably for the size, we're going to remove some of the roots because we've got actually a little bit too much. So we're going to get rid of those. Another pot in our topsoil. Put that down in there. Try to center it a little bit. Okay. All right. Tamp it down a little bit. And we're going to cut the tops out. Plant number 3. Okay, now we're going to start on plant number 4. Again, for the amount of leaves we're going to have, we can cut some of these roots away. Not going to need that much root to support, since we're going to be doing away with most of the leaf. And we're going to carefully put that in there. Just tamp it down so it'll stay in there nice and firm. Cut the tops out. A little bit tough there to get rid of. I'll move these out of the way so I have some room to work. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and still have 2 more to go. So we started, like I said, with 1 hosta for around $7 or $8, and now we are looking at 6 hostas. So at $1 a piece, that's really good. Tamp it down. Okay, cut the tops out. And then the last one, we're going to have just enough soil to do this one. Okay. Okay. We've got a really good shot of the crown of the rhizome there. So that's really what you're doing. You're dividing the rhizome. Okay, we're going to put that into its pot. Okay. And then we're going to cut the top out. And if we had a larger hosta, obviously we would need much larger, like gallon size or maybe 3-gallon size pots, but we're starting these as basically the beginning of a 1-gallon pot. So the next step, I want to make sure it's nice and compacted, and I'm going to do slow release fertilizer and figure out what I did with it. Okay, Osmocote slow release fertilizer. I've been using this for 20 years, and it's actually one of my favorites. So I just pour it to my hand. Just a small amount, just a tiny handful of it. Make sure it doesn't wash out when we go to water it. Okay, put the rest of that in there. This is going to help it get a really fast start for the rest of the autumn, and it'll have a jump start on next spring. So the last thing I'm going to do is going to top dress it with vermiculite, and these will be ready to go into the shade. I want to make sure they do not get any sun at this level, at this stage. Okay, the last thing I'm doing here is adding a little bit of vermiculite to the top to help retain moisture. We just want to make sure we've tamped it down so the vermiculite will stay in there when we go to water, because vermiculite is very light and it can get washed out pretty easy from a heavy shower. So I'm just going to press it down a little bit there, and we're just going to put that on each plant. Okay. All right, so we're ready to do watering. And one thing I like to do is I like to put them on trays in the shade. And the trays I purchased were on eBay. They were old lunchroom trays, and I'll show you those in just a sec. Okay, these lunchroom trays will last forever. I've had some of these for almost 20 years. And so the other great thing about these trays is they'll hold just enough water where it can soak it up from the base, wick it up from the base into the plant, so you don't have to water as much. Just sitting on the ground, it's going to go into the ground. So this way you have kind of a little self-watering system that will keep the plant moist while it's starting to grow again. Okay, one thing I almost forgot to mention, when you're using a tray or something that's going to have standing water in it, you want to get some of these mosquito bits and just sprinkle a few of them in the tray. And as the mosquitoes lay their larvae or their eggs in here and the larvae hatch out, they will eat on these and it will kill them. This is perfectly safe. It's safe for birds and pets. And you can get this. I've used this for years as well on my bonsai plants, and it keeps the mosquitoes down in your yard. If you have a lot of these trays, you're going to be basically breeding mosquitoes. So you want to make sure you use these. Okay, the last thing we're going to do, we're going to thoroughly water. I love this mist feature on this Orbit sprayer. It works great. That way you don't wash the vermiculite out or any of the topsoil. And you can just carefully give it a really good soaking. I know it's going to take a little bit longer with the mist. Just going to take a few minutes. As you can see, I don't know if you're close enough, but the tray, I'll bring the camera in a little bit closer, but the tray will start filling with water. Okay, here's a better shot here. We're just going to carefully continue. Keep letting it soak up the water. And like I say, when this tray fills up, you'll have watering from beneath through a wicking. So it will be wicking up through the soil. The pine bark is great for holding moisture, but not too much moisture. I'm just going to keep putting in there. Now, I'll show you, you can even do the shower. It's adjustable, where you give it a really light shower, give it a really light watering. You don't wash any soil or vermiculite out, not to mention the mosquito bits in the tray. So we just want to try to be really careful about that as well, because we don't want mosquitoes breeding in our trays. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set these carefully on this, trying to keep all the water in there. And this is in complete shade. It'll be protected. And also it's under my irrigation system that goes off for maybe a minute a day. If you don't have an irrigation system, you can water these maybe just maybe in the evening, 2 or 3 times a week. Just make sure they don't dry out. And of course, as long as this tray is not completely dry, you might get away with as little as once a week. But as long as there's water here, you'll know that it's wicking it up into the pot. So in the last part, I wanted to show you some of these miniature hostas I have. They truly are palm-sized hostas, and they do bloom. As you can see, there is a flower blooming there, a flower blooming there. This is late July, so they do bloom late in the summer. Some will bloom earlier. This one right here, you can see there's nothing left but some seed pods. And this one may be ready to bloom, but these two have already bloomed. This one is probably just days away from blooming. You can see they're ready to open, but the size of these are really tiny. And the last thing I'm going to show you, some of my giant hostas before the sun sets, and you can take a look and see the difference in the varieties. There's probably over 100 varieties of hosta hybrids in the standard plantain lilies. But these are some of the best things you can put in pots. They love being in pots. They can survive winters in pots. I've had hostas in pots that made it through winters where it was single-digit temperatures Fahrenheit, and they survived just fine. They came back next year even better. So I'll show you the giant hostas, and that'll be it. So you can see there's some hostas hidden back there in the Zen garden, and I just wanted to give you kind of a preview of how great they look as a ground cover or a potted plant. I personally like them more as a potted plant, but I'll get a close-up of each one of them, and you can see how great they are in the Japanese. You can see how great they are in the Japanese Zen garden. So you can see these are really large hostas compared to the miniatures. Some damage I did when I transplanted these earlier in the year. In the springtime, I think some of the leaves are still damaged from that transfer. But you can see the pots are huge. I can barely move them as they're really heavy. But this particular one is probably over 15 years old. Each year it comes back a little better and a little bigger. And it probably could be divided probably 4 or 5 times, and I could just have more free hostas. So that's the hostas in the Japanese Zen garden. Hey guys, I just want to say thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like me to talk more about Japanese Zen gardens or bonsai, I can do that as well. But I like all types of garden. I have a large vegetable garden and 2 acres of pretty much manicured area that I can never run out of things to talk about. So thanks for watching, and I really appreciate it.